Bar Stalker. The clinking of ice against the glass was the loudest sound in O'Malley's that Tuesday night. A low hum of conversation filled the space, punctuated by occasional bursts of laughter. I was tucked away in a corner booth, nursing my second glass of wine and lost in the pages of a well-worn paperback. After a grueling week at the architectural firm, this quiet solitude was exactly what I needed. The man at the bar had been there for a while. I'd noticed him when I first arrived, his dark silhouette a constant fixture on one of the stools. He was nondescript, really average height, ordinary build, his face mostly obscured by the dim lighting and the brim of a baseball cap. I hadn't given him a second thought, my attention quickly returning to the intricate floor plans in my book. Around 10, the bar started to thin out. The bartender began wiping down the counter with a practiced rhythm, the scraping of glasses growing more frequent. I decided it was time to head home myself. The walk to my little Victorian house on Elm Street was usually peaceful, the tree-lined sidewalks quiet and safe. As I slid out of the booth, I glanced towards the bar. The man was still there, his gaze fixed in my direction. For a fleeting moment, our eyes met. His were dark and intense, and a shiver that had nothing to do with the cool night air ran down my spine. I quickly looked away, grabbing my purse and jacket. "Good night," I mumbled to the bartender, who offered a tired smile in return. The moment I stepped out onto the sidewalk, the silence of the night seemed to amplify. The streetlights cast long, dancing shadows, and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze sounded almost like whispers. I started walking, my heels clicking softly on the pavement. A few blocks in, I noticed a figure behind me. At first, I dismissed it as another late-night walker, someone heading home after an evening out. But as I turned onto a quieter stretch of road, the figure remained, keeping pace a short distance behind. My heart started to beat a little faster. I quickened my step, and so did the figure. I slowed down, and the figure mirrored my pace. A cold knot of fear began to tighten in my stomach. I risked a quick glance over my shoulder. The dim light made it hard to see clearly, but the baseball cap was unmistakable. It was the man from the bar. Panic flared. Why was he following me? I didn't recognize him, hadn't spoken to him. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, but all I could feel was a growing sense of dread. I clutched my keys tightly in my hand, the jagged edges digging into my palm. My house was still a few blocks away, and the street felt increasingly deserted. The shadows seemed to deepen, to stretch and writhe like grasping fingers. I decided to change my route, turning abruptly onto a side street that led through a small, dimly lit park. It was a risk, the park could be deserted and dangerous, but the thought of continuing on the main road, knowing he was right behind me, was unbearable. The crunch of gravel beneath my shoes seemed deafening in the silence. I kept my eyes straight ahead, trying to appear confident, even though every nerve in my body was screaming. I could hear the faint but persistent sound of footsteps behind me, the rhythm matching my own. As I emerged from the park onto another residential street, my house finally came into view at the end of the block. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by a fresh wave of fear. He knew where I lived now. I hurried up my porch steps, fumbling with the keys in my trembling hand. The lock clicked, and I practically stumbled inside, slamming the door shut and fumbling with the deadbolt. I leaned against the cool wood, gasping for breath, my ears straining for any sound from outside. Silence. Only the frantic thumping of my own heart filled the small entryway. I crept to the living room window, peering out through the gap in the curtains. The street was empty, the only movement the gentle sway of the branches in the night breeze. Had he gone? Had I overreacted? A sliver of doubt crept into my mind. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe he lived on this street too. But the intense look in his eyes at the bar, the unwavering persistence of his pursuit, it all felt too deliberate. I didn't dare turn on the lights, moving through my own house like a ghost. I checked every window, every door, making sure they were securely locked. The familiar comfort of my home now felt like a fragile shell, easily breached. I found my phone and dialed the non-emergency police line, my voice shaking as I recounted what had happened. The dispatcher listened patiently, taking down my information and promising to send an officer to patrol the area. But I knew that by the time they arrived, he would likely be long gone. After hanging up, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I couldn't just sit here and wait. I needed to know if he was still out there. Armed with a heavy iron poker from the fireplace, I cautiously made my way to the back door. I peered through the peephole, but the backyard was shrouded in darkness. Slowly, I unlocked the door and slipped outside, the cool night air raising goosebumps on my arms. The backyard was quiet, the only sounds the chirping of crickets and the distant hum of traffic. I moved stealthily along the edge of the house, my senses on high alert. As I rounded the corner, I froze. Standing at the edge of my property, near the overgrown hedges that lined the back fence, was a figure. Even in the darkness, I could make out the familiar silhouette, the baseball cap pulled low over his face. My breath caught in my throat. He hadn't left. He had been waiting. He turned his head slightly, as if sensing my presence. Even in the dim light filtering from my windows, I could feel his gaze on me, cold and unwavering. Terror lent me a strange kind of courage. I raised the poker, my hand trembling but my grip firm. "Who are you, and what do you want?" My voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the silence. He didn't answer. He simply stood there, a silent, menacing presence in the darkness. The seconds stretched into an eternity. The only sound was the frantic pounding of my own heart. I wanted to scream, to run back inside, but I was frozen, caught in the beam of his unseen gaze. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. In it, I saw a small, dark object glinting in the faint light. My blood ran cold. Before I could react, a loud crack echoed from the front of the house. Startled, the figure in the backyard flinched, his attention momentarily diverted. It was all the opening I needed. I turned and ran, scrambling back towards the house, my bare feet pounding on the dewy grass. I didn't dare look back, my only thought to get inside, to safety. I burst through the back door, slamming and locking it behind me. I fumbled with the chain lock, my fingers clumsy with fear. Just as I secured it, I heard a heavy thud against the door, followed by another and another. He was trying to get in. Panic surged through me. I ran to the living room, grabbing my phone and redialing 911, my voice a choked sob as I screamed for help. The sounds from the back door continued, the relentless thudding, the splintering of wood. I knew it wouldn't hold for long. I looked around the living room, my eyes darting frantically for something else to use as a weapon. A heavy glass vase on the mantelpiece caught my eye. I grabbed it, my knuckles white as I clutched it tightly. The back door finally gave way with a splintering crash. I could hear footsteps inside the house, heavy and deliberate. He was in. My heart hammered against my ribs. I backed away slowly, my eyes fixed on the doorway, the vase raised and ready. He appeared in the doorway, his face still obscured by the shadows of the baseball cap. But there was something else now, something glinting in his hand, a knife. A primal scream tore from my throat. I lunged forward, swinging the vase with all my might. It connected with a sickening thud, and the man stumbled back, a groan escaping his lips. He didn't fall. He stood there, swaying slightly, the knife still clutched in his hand. His head slowly turned towards me, and for the first time, I saw his face clearly in the dim light. It was an ordinary face, unremarkable, yet twisted now with a chilling intensity. His eyes, dark and empty, locked onto mine, and a slow, predatory smile spread across his lips. He took a step towards me, and I knew this wasn't going to end easily. Suddenly, a loud crash from the front of the house startled both of us. Shouts echoed from outside, followed by the sound of running footsteps. "Police! Open up!" The man's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with a furious intensity. He took another step towards me, the knife raised. But the distraction had given me a precious few seconds. I scrambled backwards, putting the living room furniture between us. The front door burst open, and two uniformed police officers rushed inside, their guns drawn. "Freeze!" The man hesitated for a moment, his gaze flicking between me and the officers. Then, with a guttural snarl, he lunged towards me again. The officers reacted instantly. There was a sharp crack, and the man crumpled to the floor. The world seemed to tilt and spin. The adrenaline that had been coursing through me suddenly drained away, leaving me weak and trembling. The officers approached cautiously, their eyes on the fallen man. One of them knelt down to check his pulse. "He's alive," he said, his voice grim. "Call for paramedics." Another officer came over to me, his expression concerned. "Are you all right?" I could only nod, my body shaking uncontrollably. The events of the past hour replayed in my mind, the chilling realization of how close I had come to something terrible. The paramedics arrived quickly, followed by more police officers. The scene in my once peaceful living room was now a chaotic swirl of flashing lights and hushed voices. I was taken to the hospital to be checked over. Physically, I was unharmed, just a few bruises and scrapes. But the emotional scars, I knew, would take much longer to heal. The police investigation revealed that the man had a history of stalking and harassment. He had apparently fixated on me at the bar and followed me home. They found his car parked a few blocks away, filled with disturbing items. In the days and weeks that followed, I struggled to feel safe in my own home. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every unexpected sound sent my heart racing. I installed extra locks, security cameras, and an alarm system, but the feeling of vulnerability lingered. Sleep offered little escape, my dreams haunted by the dark figure with the baseball cap and the glint of the knife. The quiet solitude I once cherished now felt like a terrifying isolation. Slowly, with the support of friends and family, and the help of therapy, I began to piece my life back together. The fear didn't disappear entirely, but it started to recede, replaced by a fragile sense of resilience. The memory of that night remained, a dark and chilling reminder of the fragility of safety and the insidious nature of obsession. I would never forget the feeling of being watched, the terror of being pursued in the darkness. And every now and then, when the silence of the night grew too heavy, I would still find myself checking the locks, peering out the window, the echo of those heavy footsteps still haunting my dreams. The clinking of ice in a glass would sometimes bring back a fleeting, unsettling memory, a reminder of the ordinary beginning to an extraordinary and terrifying night.
But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, maybe you'll get sick of being